Hi, everybody. Everybody says this, but it really is great to be here. It's been a great conference so far. I am a huge advocate of finding new ways to get connections between people, especially the people that don't always work together. So I've personally learned a lot of things that are good. My name is Mark Schroep. I work with Schmidt Marine Technology Partners, and I'm going to try to do a few things here in a short amount of time. The first is I'm going to tell you a little bit about Schmidt Marine, hopefully not to sound like a commercial, but to give context to some of the other things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to confess 3 of my personal short failings. This is, of course, a subset of the full list of short failings, but a subset that hopefully has some application to conservation technology. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the lessons that we've learned in the work that we've done funding ocean technology projects. So I always like to start here, or I have to start here. I'm part of a sort of confusing array of organizations. I don't know if people here will have followed. There's a research vessel, Falcor, that's gotten a lot of attention in South America over the past few months with some discoveries they've made. That is not us. They will not let me have a ship. That is a separate organization called the Schmidt Ocean Institute. But it is the same Schmidts, and we're all connected, and we're all a family. But we're a little different. So we started the program about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago. And the shortest way to put what we do is that we fund the development of technologies that solve ocean problems. We're strictly focused on ocean conservation problems. And we started out with a few sort of underlying principles that we thought could guide the work. One of them that, of course, has proven true, and we all know it's true, is that there are a lot of good ideas out there that die without the appropriate support. And that can take different forms. Sometimes it's academics who have a great idea, but they don't quite know how to carry it forward. Or maybe it's somebody who does know how to carry it forward, but can't find the support. There's a whole range of ways that we have good ideas die. And so we wanted to hopefully keep some of those ideas from dying. We also came in with this idea that we could borrow from the business world, or help people to borrow from the business world. We're talking a lot about scaling at this conference, and that's basically what we mean. Doesn't mean that we want conservation tech to look just like a Silicon Valley company or a VC-supported project, but we think there are some lessons there, and we recognize that, as I think we all do, technology only solves a subset of the problems. Of course, there's other things out in conservation. And within technology, there's maybe only a subset that are appropriate for some kind of commercialization or widespread scaling. And then the final thing is that the earliest stages are the hardest to fund. Every stage is hard to fund, I know, but we wanted to try and identify the biggest gaps that we could fill. And another kind of corollary to that is we recognize that a lot of times when people could get funding to support development of a technology, it was too short term. It was a 1-year, a 2-year, a 3-year grant. As lots of folks here know, it takes a long time to get a tech out into the world and doing the work that it needs to do. So when we support projects, we tend to do something in the order of 5 to 7 years of support, and we try to stick with them basically as long as it takes that they can achieve some kind of economic sustainability, whether that's occasionally through conventional investment or whether that's through paying contracts or whatever's appropriate. But that's what we're trying to get them. I should have already clicked to this. This is a slide we've used for years. Everybody talks about the Valley of Death. We call it the Trench of Death because it's ocean stuff, but it's the same idea. How do you get these ideas over to impact, and how do you go through the testing? What kind of support is available? A lot of times, there in the middle, it can be very hard to fund, but that's what we're aiming to do. We've got a very broad range of things that we focus on. The focus areas there on the left, I won't go into the whole thing, but a lot of it is things that are relevant to the group here. So we do habitat restoration funding, and we fund a whole range of sensors, MPA, monitoring, all sorts of things along those lines. And we've had the chance to fund now over 100 projects around the world. We don't have, obviously, any regional boundaries. Of course, there's some concentrations in certain places, and there's a whole lot of the world that we haven't covered yet, or that the people that we're working with haven't covered yet, so there's plenty of work to be done. So that's just the setup for what we're doing. I'll go to the confessions part. I can be pretty grouchy. I have to fight against that in the work that we do. And one of the great things to me about the work that we're doing here, that really you all are doing and that we're trying to support, as you well know, the world is a mess. I assume people have been outside. There's a lot of problems, politics, environment, everything else. It's pretty easy to get grouchy, I think. I am, by the way, I'm in good company in being grouchy sometimes. But what I think is a beautiful thing about the technologies that people are working on, that we're talking about here this week, is that even though we recognize the problems are huge, we get to focus on some good stories. We get to focus on some positive things. Yeah, it's really hard to solve the problems, but at least we're taking steps, or you're taking steps to solve the problems. So that's, I think, a privilege that is not enjoyed by everyone in all types of work in conservation. Second, it's kind of related to grouchy, but I get a little bit cynical, and one of the ways that that plays out that I have to sort of catch myself is when we're talking to groups about what they're doing, I'll sort of be asking myself, how does this person working in a garage, how is this team that has this one project in Portugal or whatever it is, how are these people going to take what they're doing and get it all over the world and fix the problems all around the world? And of course, that's not really the right question to be asking. It's not appropriate. The appropriate question, there's the planet, you've seen it. The appropriate question is, are they taking the next logical step towards scaling up? Are they going to be able to do something that is going to prove out in a way that allows them or someone else to take the next step towards going bigger? And so that's what we're looking for. I think scale can be, it can mean a lot of things to different people. The business model, or the kind of the Silicon Valley view of scale, is that we have this VC funding and you scale exponentially. That's almost never going to be appropriate in conservation, but I think it can look different. Scaling can look different. Maybe it's not one group that has to conquer the whole world, because there's probably not going to be enough money to do it that way, but maybe it's one group that proves a model that another group can take, and then maybe another group can say, oh, I've seen these two that are doing pretty well. We're going to take it to the next step. Most of the people we work with, and I think this would be true for a lot of folks in this audience, they would be perfectly happy if somebody came along and did what they're doing better and was able to take it all the way around the world, because they really are focused on solving problems, not so much on, obviously, making money. If they were focused on making money, they landed in the wrong place. This is the third one. I'm a terrible scientist. I don't have the attention span to be a scientist. I mislabel samples, irreplaceable samples from the middle of the ocean. I melt glassware. I do things like that. So I learned very early on that I needed to do something else. And what basically happened was that I became a sort of professional observer. So I worked for about 15 years as a journalist, and then whatever you call what I'm doing now, I've been doing this for 10 or 12 years now. And I like to think I'm a good observer. I let all y'all do the work, and then I just watch and see things and try to spot trends and all of that. And it is kind of my, I guess, my job to believe this, but I really do believe that we are at a very important point in time, that we're on a cusp of some really great things in conservation technology. Yes, it's hard. Yes, the problems are big. Yes, it's hard to get the funding to do the things that need to be done, but the pieces are there. We have incredible technologies available. We have great people working on it. We have more and more people that are interested in funding it. I know we need more, but I really do think it's a great time. So if you can sort of agree with me that it's an important time and there's some really positive things to focus on, the question is, how do we stay focused on the pause in the right place? So at my house, what we did was we bought a puppy, and we named him Sunny, but I really wanted to see that in the full screen. That only makes you feel better for a little while. I mean, every day, but it's not going to solve everything. You really have to have more of a concrete plan for how we're going to address the problems in the world besides buying puppies. So, urgent problems, we recognize that they're urgent, and that can lead us sometimes to want to grow too quickly or try to do things too quickly. Of course, all these problems need to be solved yesterday, but if you go too fast and you don't have a plan, you're not going to get where we need to go. So these are just some sort of quick lessons that we've learned from the groups that we've worked with. Obviously, it's all ocean focused, but hopefully there's some relevance to other folks working in other areas. It may be obvious, but we did some research last year when we hit our 10th anniversary, just talking to former grantees and things like that about what's worked and where they're at. And the thing that kept happening over and over again was seeing that the ones that were successful, the most successful for the ones that were able to focus their attentions. And so what I mean is, we all have, well, maybe we don't all have, lots of people, you have great ideas, you're hit with all kinds of other problems, but if you're trying to get a technology out into the world at scale, and for us, scale just means making it available to the people that need it, you got to focus on the plan that's going to do that and not let yourself get distracted, or at least that's what we've seen with a lot of folks. We have much of the technology. We talked about this at the MPA workshop. But I think I need to correct myself, because one of the points that I made is there's not a huge technology gap for monitoring, let's say, an MPA, even a remote area. We could do that. We have the technology. We can do all kinds of things with satellites. But the reason I was kind of wrong when I said that we don't have a technology gap is having the technology available isn't really the challenge. The challenge is having the technology be affordable enough and accessible enough and easy enough to use that all the people that need it can get it. So if we have a technology that's too expensive or otherwise out of reach for the people that need it, we don't really have the technology we need. So there is work to be done. We have to get funding in the right places and in the right form. We're going to sit down here in just a minute and talk more about funding, so I won't stay very long for that. And then the last one is just that stories are powerful. I'm a huge advocate for communications work and working with the media and social media, but that's not, and that's important. But what I'm talking about more is groups have to be able to tell their story in a way that they get other people excited about what they're doing, whether it's you're trying to find a funder or you're trying to find an engineer. Whatever it is, you need to tell a compelling story. And if you aren't able to do that well, that's something to work on, or something to find somebody that can help you do that. There's lots of folks around that can do that. So I'll just leave with this thought. It's something that I think about a lot. Again, when things get a little daunting, is that we made the mess. We can fix it if we have the right resources. So that's it. And then I guess we're going to talk a little more here. But thanks. Happy to talk to people more about all this stuff if there are questions.